The Copperplate Majuscule alphabet also has a set of fundamental strokes, and I've broken it down into 7 basic shapes. The first 4 are the capital stems, and then there are 3 entry elements, and a couple of these have some variations, but this is just how I've chosen to break it down based on what makes sense to me and what I've seen other people call these strokes. So we'll just start by going through first the 4 capital stems. Okay. Now the very first stem is called either the universal line of beauty. A lot of people refer to it as that. Some people I think just call this a capital stem, but I'll draw it and then I'll explain it. So right now I'm using walnut ink and I'm using a Hunt 101 nib. Okay, so this is the first stem. And again, it's called the universal line of beauty. So this shape, also I'm using 6mm guidelines, and these are 55 degrees. And for majuscule letters, I make them 3 spaces tall, so if my X height is 1 space, so the 1 minuscule letter would fit into this space, I'm making it 3 times that height. Okay, so again, starts with a hairline, swells as you come down, and then comes back to a hairline. And this one actually was not that great. So the goal is to think of the shape, and this is an analogy that Paul Antonio, his Instagram handle is PA Scribe. He also has a lot of really great YouTube videos, but he likes to draw this shape where it's just a straight line and then a line along your slant and then another straight line. So the goal is to connect these with a curve, a hairline, and then when you're along the slant, add some shade, come back to a hairline, and then you get these triangular shapes at the top and the bottom. Okay, so again, we'll start with a hairline, curve in, add a shade, release, and come back down. So you want the shade to be along the slant. You also do not want to make it look like an S. So you do not, I'm going to put an X here before I even draw it. You do not want to, once you come to the left, come back to the right. You see how this is curving twice in the shade? And that's kind of a dramatic, it's kind of dramatic, but you want to keep this part of the shade basically a straight line. Okay, so this is present in a lot of the majuscule letters. Again, if you ever run out of ink like I just did, continue drawing, finish making the stroke, and then go back and fill it in with the wet ink. I'm just using the tip to drag the ink and fill it in. Okay, so this stem, you'll see it a lot, and it has 2 kind of variations. The first one you'll see is adding a terminal dot at the end. So it starts the same, and then instead of finishing with a hairline, you can curve around and come back up and make this teardrop shape, then fill it in. So that's a terminal dot. And I would recommend practicing this along your guidelines so you know you're making it at the right angle. So again, come around and then fill that in. And this should come up about halfway between the baseline and the header line. So about halfway. don't make the dot too small that you can't see it, but also not too big. This one is looking a little bit big. Probably make it more like this size. Okay, another way that you can end this shape is by continuing out and to the left and then come loop back up. And this loop is going to be really flat. So continue along the baseline pretty far out, then come up and cross back. Okay, so you want to make sure you're keeping the loop thin in this direction and then also coming out far enough to the left. So you'll see this in like the letter L, you'll also see it in the letter D, and that's really the key to making those letters look balanced, is making sure you're coming out far enough to the left. Okay, so that's the first stem. Again, it's the universal line of beauty. Okay, now let's go to the next one. And the next one follows the exact same shape as the universal line of beauty, except it's a thin stroke. So rather than starting at the top and coming down, we're going to start at the bottom and come up in a hairline that makes the same shape. So starting at the baseline, curving to meet that slant, and then ending by hugging the second ascender. Same with this one, you want to think of it as these triangular shapes here and here. And again, you do not want to make it look like an S. So do you see how it crosses this line twice? Or I guess 3 times. You cross over to the right, crossing back to the left, and then again to the right. You do not want to do that. Once you hit the line, you stay on the line until you come off of it at the top. Okay, so again, hug the baseline, come up for the middle section, at least the middle third, even a little bit more than that, should just be this straight line. So another way to think of the universal line of beauty, either one, they're the same thing, is if you just, this middle third, if you just think of that as a swell, and then added the hairlines at the top and the bottom. Okay, so again, hairline, thick line, hairline. Alright, and this one also has a couple variations. So the first one is same as this, where there's going to be a dot here, and you can either draw the line, draw the stroke and then add the dot at the end. So you could go like this and then come back and add the dot the same way you would for the downstroke version. Or if you wanted, you could come around and make a circle from as you start, and then come back and fill it in. Or you could make the circle, fill it in, and then finish the line. Usually I draw the dot first and then finish the line. Okay, and then something else that you will sometimes see is basically the opposite of this, where you make the line and then add a dot at the top. So this shape, I don't know if I called it anything, but I call it the hairline universal line of beauty, or hairline S curve, even though you don't want to make it an S shape. Sometimes it's referred to as that. Okay. So this is found in the letter A, starts like this, the letter N, and then some of the letters, like you can end the letter N like this. Okay, there are 2 more stems. And the third one is a C curve. So a C curve, again, is 3 spaces tall, and basically it's like part of an oval. So if you were to continue making the C curve and follow it around, it would have the shape of an oval. Okay, and then for this shape, the axis of it should be this 55-degree slant, and you can kind of see on this one I drew it to the left of this line, but this line kind of intersects the axis of this shape. So you don't want the inside part of this curve to be a straight line. Like, you don't want to trace the straight line. I'll show you what I mean. Sorry that this keeps happening with my ink. Okay, so you don't want the inside part of the curve to be a straight line like this. You want the whole thing to be curved. Okay, so that's a no. And then the only real variation, and I don't know if you would really call this a variation, but sometimes, a lot of times, like in the letter C, you will continue coming up and then back down. Okay. So for this shape, to practice it, I would actually recommend making some large ovals just to get your hand used to this shape. Of course, ovals are hard. Small ovals are difficult. Large ovals are even more difficult because your fingers have to move a lot. But practice some large ovals and then the motion will feel a little bit more natural. So for this variation, you want to make sure you're coming back up far enough so that you can go back down. If you just kind of curve around like this, it is a matter of personal preference, but I think it looks better when you come up and around, and that'll be more apparent when we make the letters. Okay, our last stem, and again, these stems are the backbone of the Majuscules, which basically means it's like the main stroke. The last one is a vertical, it's almost vertical, and it's slightly curved, so I call it the vertical curve. Okay, so if this is the baseline, you want to think of a line perpendicular to the baseline. So that's kind of straight up and down if this is a 90-degree angle. And compared to this slant line, which is what we're basing everything off of, this vertical line looks like it's leaning to the left, but that's the angle that you want to make this line. So it's kind of like the same swell as the universal line of beauty. This one is kind of a tough one. You can kind of make it like a S shape, a little bit like curved like this. That's how I usually do it when I'm writing a letter. This is in the letter N. But You don't want it to be along this line because then it won't be vertical. It'll be slanted. But you also don't want it leaning too far back. So as straight as you can get it with, you can have a little bit of curve. So without a shade, it would kind of look like this, where it has a little bit of curve. Okay, and those are the 4 capital stems. So to review, we have the universal line of beauty, and that has a couple variations. You can add a terminal dot at the end. You can also add this loop. So practice making this shape, and then practice making each of these individual ones where you continue through and add either the dot or the loop. Next is the hairline S-curve, or the hairline universal line of beauty. Again, make sure you're practicing it on these guidelines so that the middle section is a straight line. And then you have the C-curve, which is just basically the left half of an oval, and you can continue the C-curve up and around. That'll appear in a couple letters. And then we have the vertical curve, which is close to perpendicular to the baseline and has a little bit of a wave, a swell. Starts at a hairline, swells, and then back to a hairline. Okay, so those are the 4 capital stems, and next up are the 3 entry elements.